Right, okay, so thank you very much everyone for attending to this workshop. And my aim was to make it as interactive as possible, but seeing that there aren't much participants, we can still obviously do something and do a presentation with regard to the subject. So basically the topic of the presentation is challenges in the mechanical testing of bespoke VR controllers, while we shall be talking briefly about what are the problems mainly encountered when testing um, VR controllers, and particularly bespoke and custom controllers, and also the sort of way forward and how to go about and come up with new test plans and testing strategies to test customized and bespoke controllers. Okay, next. So briefly, these are this is the main agenda. So we'll run through the main challenges encountered, particularly from the aspect of PrimeVR2, and then standards used and adopted when testing VR controllers, standards that we have to comply with, particularly medical device regulatory standards, and also testing standards for mechanical and physical testing, and then procedures that are implemented when testing mainstream controllers. So how do companies go about testing VR controllers and VR systems, and how do we as Prime VR go about in testing our own controllers that we are designing for different users. And at the end, the last item on the agenda is sort of to go briefly into depth on how verification and validation testing is typically carried out. Okay, next. So brief introduction about myself. Um, uh, Next, Colin, please. Thank you. So very quickly, I'm a researcher working at the University of Malta, and since 2019, I've been sort of employed on the Horizon 2020, on board in the Horizon 2020 project named PrimeVR2. So basically, I support. There was already an introduction about what PrimeVR2 is, and basically my role is to support the research team at the University of Malta to sort of guide and lead the product assembly and testing of different VR controllers. So we're designing different controllers for different users, particularly aimed at people undergoing rehabilitation from different conditions such as musculoskeletal injuries, and also conditions such as dystonia or post-stroke conditions. And my role is sort of to guide the product assembly, design the testing hardware, and testing also jigs and in-house equipment that we require in order to conduct both verification and validation on the equipment and on the controller being designed. So this is my role with the University of Malta. Okay, next. So basically, I mean, I've written discussion, so I wanted the format of the presentation to be sort of a discussion. So feel free to raise your hand whenever I'm talking, because I'd like to hear ideas from different backgrounds of of industry, obviously. Okay, next. So the first point I wanted to discuss is this question, sort of the first pointer. What are the key challenges in order to develop a robust test plan for testing bespoke VR controllers? So basically, I've written off four different types of problems or challenges. Let's say I've started off with user requirements. As we know, different users and different people have different conditions, different measurements, different injuries and conditions that they are experiencing. So that in itself is a challenge, in our opinion. So people coming from different backgrounds is a challenge. So it makes it hard to sort of try and identify and monitor different requirements pertaining to different patients, because most of the time we are designing generic controllers aimed, or at least bespoke controllers, but aimed at a generic condition. let's say. So that makes it hard in itself because even within one particular condition, there's a variety of users um, which have different requirements and different needs, let's say. So within the bespoke characteristics, there are different users which have a variety of measurements, ergonomic requirements, and different, obviously, physiology, which is required to monitor within the design of the controller. Also from the regards to user experience, so we cannot design a controller which satisfies everyone. We cannot design a product which is up to the requirements of any user or any human being. So we have to sort of balance, and it's up to us designers and engineers to sort of find the right balance between understanding the user experience of the majority of the patients or of the users, and sort of try and balance it out between satisfying those requirements and also creating product specifications which suit the functionality of the controller being designed. Another challenge that I see personally is to translating the user requirements into testing specifications. So this is usually the hardest of them all, just because the feedback from the patients and the feedback from the users involved. By users, I mean clinicians, I mean patients, I mean peer designers, typically stops at the requirements collection stage, requirements identification. So it's up to us designers and us engineers to sort of come up with these testing specifications, which is sort of the hardest of the hardest part of the testing plan, coming up with specifications and what critical areas one must test, right? So it depends on what materials we are selecting. We have to specify what type of technology we will be implementing. So basically our aim in PrimeVR2 is to manufacture controllers using additive manufacturing technology, so 3D printing with different materials. So we are exploring at the same time different materials such as TPU, polymers, ABS, and materials of this sort, so polymeric materials, and even possibly the integration of fabrics within the controller itself, just as an idea. So all of this new technology, obviously it's very creative, it's very innovative, it's very exciting to be using and to be implementing. However, it makes it even harder to define the actual specifications, because we have to sort of balance between feeding the requirements of the users, but at the same time maintaining the functionality of obviously of the controller of the product that you're designing. So the balance between functionality and also usability, so aesthetics, human factors, but also the operation, the functionality of the controller of the product, that is in itself a challenge. So that should be addressed in a robust testing plan. So obviously, depending on what type of function or what type of testing you will be carrying out at a later stage. So there are different tests that one should consider: functional tests, integration tests, testing on housings, or black box or white box testing involving the controller itself. So even specifying the type of tests or shortlisting the actual tests that you should be performing as a company or as an academic researcher or an industry, that is in itself a challenge. One last point I want to mention before we move on is data analysis. Obviously, when carrying out and conducting testing, you'd be collecting lots and lots of data, but not all data is relevant. And the relevant data, one should sort of sit down and understand what to do with that relevant data. So that should play a main role in testing, and that is often a problem in conducting and carrying out the planning for testing. Okay, next. So a few other sort of problems and pitfalls that I personally see